All right, hello. We are ready to start. Here in Central Europe is 2:30 p.m. First of all, welcome to participate to another Skillman webinar. I'm very glad to see many of you already connected. And while we wait for more to join us, let's get you all introduced with the main instructions and details. Today we have an important opportunity to learn more about Selfie, this free and customized EU tool that helps schools assess where they stand in terms of providing learning in the digital age. So first of all, let me thank you, the European Training Foundation and JRC, the Joint Research Center of the European Commission, for their great contribution in the organization of the event, first of all, and then for sharing their valuable knowledge on the topic with us today. Thank you very much. Also, a big thanks goes to the 3 professionals from Turkey, Montenegro, and Georgia, who are also with us today to share their experience with the Selfie tool, and that I'll be glad to introduce to you in just a minute. Now for the audience, you had already a bit of time to read the main instructions of this event on your screen. But so at this very time, you are muted and your cameras are off. So in just a minute, we will have the main block of presentations for today's webinar. And after that, we have devoted a whole space for panel discussion. So during that time, we will address all your questions that you can address during the whole webinar. So while the speakers are going to present, you will be able to ask your question and share your comments just by clicking on the Q&A button box just below your screen. By doing so, we'll collect all the questions, and then during the panel discussion, we'll address them to the speakers. Now, my name is Valentina De Vico. I am the Skillman Communication Manager, and I'll be here with you all throughout the whole webinar, listening to this outstanding and interesting topic given by our speakers of today. I'm very glad and actually very honored to present to you and introduce you the main speakers of today. First of all, we will have Nicoletta Giannozzou from JRC at the European Commission. She will be facilitating our panel discussion, so thank you very much, Nicoletta, for being with us. Then we'll be hearing from Alessandro Rolpito, a senior specialist in digital skills and learning from the European Training Foundation. And then, as I mentioned already, we'll be hearing 3 examples of how Selfie is used in Turkey with Tala Bektash, the headmaster of Ibrahim Ozadin Vet School. Then Elena Tanjevic, ICT coordinator of the vocational school, Sergij Stanic, apologies for my pronunciation, from Montenegro. And then the last one will be Lika Zahalzivishvili, qualifications development from the LEPL National Center in Georgia. Now, we continue to implement this series of technical webinars through our long-standing collaboration with the European Training Foundation within a broader scale of action that mainly involves the Skillman network. So from our side, I would just like to share with you the main highlights and explain to you what Skillman is. So the Skillman network is a broad international network of TVET providers, universities, industries, individuals, policymakers, and it's focused mainly on skills research and training in the advanced manufacturing sector. Now, within the network, we introduce and exchange skills to cope with the new challenges and needs of the labor market. And here with you, I'm sharing the highlights of our latest achievements that we did in 2020 in terms of numbers. And so we see that we have reached more than 600 members within the network in 93 countries. We have 50 plus ambassadors coming from different backgrounds that spread around the principles of the network. And another good achievement that we did in 2020 was the creation of these peer learning clubs, these groups of experts that discuss main topics around TVET. Now we regularly organize a series of activities and we try to keep it dynamic and very engaging for our audience. So follow us for more opportunity in the upcoming future. We don't want this to be a sole event with no follow-up in the future. So please stay with us for more opportunities later. All these activities are actually organized within the SkillNet project, a project that is co-funded by the European Commission and that we have been implementing with a number of international organizations. AER, the Assembly of European Regions, IVETA, the International Vocational Education and Training Association, then EAPRIL, and in special partnership with the European Training Foundation that is with us today. Now, I don't want to get too much in detail on my presentation. I just want to forward my invitation for all of you who are interested in continuing to discuss this topic to join our PLCs, our peer learning clubs. We have more than 200 experts involved in those groups. So if you want to continue discussing topics, relevant topics around TVET, including the one that we are addressing today, please click on the link that Julia is sharing with you in the chat. And I'm looking forward to seeing all of you into these groups. Last but not least, we are streaming live on our YouTube channel, the Skillman YouTube channel. So again, if you want to watch us live streaming, just access the link that Julia is sharing with you. And then please let us know what you think about this webinar. Your feedback is very valuable to us. So find 2 minutes of your time to just fill the feedback form that Julia is sharing with you. Now, without any further delays, I want to introduce officially Nicoletta Giannesnow from JRC. So Nicoletta, if you're with us, we're very glad to have you here, and thank you very much for your contribution. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Valentina, for the nice introduction and for coping with my surname. I know it's not easy. Can I share my screen then? Yes.
All right, you have it now.
Okay, I think you can see my screen now.
Yes, we can.
Okay, great. First of all, I would like to thank you for the invitation and for this opportunity to speak about Selfie and discuss the role of Selfie on the use of digital technologies and in the domain of vets. I would like to make a small correction. I will not be facilitating. Alessandro Broadpito will be facilitating the panel discussion, and he is the responsible one for bringing in this discussion the practitioners and the people from the different viewpoints, from the schools, from the system level, and from the ICT coordination. I will help a little bit, and I will help with questions as well. Just to say that what I will try to do in this discussion, because we want to be very practical and give some things that people can take away, is I will explain a little bit what it means to use a tool like Selfie in order to integrate digital technologies for teaching and learning. As Valentina already presented me, so I will not say many things. I'm Nicoletta Giannuzzo. I am scientific officer at the Joint Research Center and the project manager of Selfie. So I will start very quickly explaining a little bit what is Selfie. Selfie is a tool which supports schools to think about or reflect critically on how to use digital technologies. What does this mean? These days we're all like, you see applications, you see devices everywhere. The problem is to think which one to use, under which circumstances and what purposes. And Selfie comes to help exactly on this. So the focus on Selfie is not so much on the technological developments. These are important, but they are a moving target. We go much deeper, and we're going to look into how we can integrate this technology so as to support teaching and learning, or the pedagogical agenda of the organizations and the training centers who want to use Selfie technology. Sorry. So very quickly, what is Selfie? Selfie is a free online tool, covers vocational schools and work-based learning, as Alessandro will be showing, and also primary and secondary education. So any school anywhere can sign up, and we already have available 32 languages, and we're going for more. And just to say that this event is very fortunate, because a couple of days ago we reached 1 million users. So for us, it's an opportunity to celebrate this as well. So we have more than 1 million users from 74 countries, and the participation on more than 9,000 schools. So yeah, it's really nice to have the opportunity to speak about this. A little bit about Selfie during this period, which I think it was very challenging for education. Here you can see our participation rates per, let's say, trimester. And in the first part, the time when we had the school closures from April until July 2020, we had a really low participation. And we understand very well that this time for schools, there were so many challenges that they had to try and address what was there. At the same time, we did not remain still, but we developed a set of questions to support education and schools and training centers to address the challenges of remote teaching and learning. So we developed a new set of questions, which we were integrated in the tool in the next session, starting from August. And then in this trimester, we were very happy to see that we reached the higher participation rates. We had almost 180,000 users in 3 months. So for us, this is a good sign for the positioning on Selfie, on how relevant it is and how important it is, not only to address situations like the one we had with the school closures, but also to help schools to harness and make use of the progress that has been made during this period, right? Because a lot of money have been invested in teacher training, in buying technologies, and how we can build on this so that we don't lose it. So that's the idea of Selfie and its role in this. So I will move a little bit forward and say, okay, Selfie, we did it. Selfie consists of a set of questions. Alessandro will say more. Produces a report for the schools to see where they stand. And I think Valentina just described it very, very nicely at the beginning. So, okay, we responded to the questions, we received the report, and now what do we do? How a school can put priorities, because we don't expect that every school will do the same thing when they use Selfie. And what I wanted to say is that Selfie has something unique because it combines 3 different perspectives. One is the school perspective, and it's the Selfie allows to the schools, because every school is different, to think about their priorities, to think about what they need, to think about what their students need. For example, some schools might have needs with respect to infrastructure. Other schools might have needs with respect to integrated technologies to support STEM. Other schools might have needs to boost a little bit more the teacher professional development. So Selfie allows for the school to look at their priorities and focus on these. At the same time, the Selfie and its questions can take into account what is the national policy. And I think our panelists later on will say a couple of things on that. And Selfie being an international, a European, and I would like to think an international tool with the contribution of the European Training Foundation, has this dimension. It offers an international perspective. I mean, you can see, because we work in developing Selfie and supporting Selfie and extending it. You're not isolated in your corner, but you're also connected with your country and with the broader developments of digital technologies. So in trying to think how we can best use Selfie, how we can set our priorities as a school, as a training center to develop our digital capacity, identify 2 types of two ways of thinking. One is thematic, to choose like which themes to focus on, and the other is some changes which has to do with the structure and the way the organization functions. Very briefly with the thematic priorities, and from my side of view, because I don't want to go into very deep details, but I want to show you how Selfie can connect you with what happens at an international level. I have used the new Digital Education Action Plan, which was published this at the end of September and is published by the European Commission. What are the priorities? And there we can see that for the European Commission and the Digital Education Action Plan, priorities are infrastructure, to support schools to develop their infrastructure in terms of connectivity, e-learning applications, supporting students and educators with disabilities, online and blended learning. In Selfie, you can find relevant questions. There will be Erasmus Plus projects supporting the digital transformation of schools, issues related to disinformation, artificial intelligence and data-related skills, computer education, inclusion of women in STEM. These are some things that the school can take into account when thinking, okay, I did Selfie, how do I develop my digital strategy based on the results of Selfie? And now I will move on to something which I call structural interventions. And I think it's really important if you want to use Selfie in what I would think is an effective way. First of all, what I want to say, and especially I would like to keep this in mind when Alessandro will be taking you deeper into the tool and the structure of of Selfie for VET is to think of Selfie not only as a set of questions, but also as an instrument which can support schools and training centers to develop continuously, to become what we say learning organizations. And if you think about reflection, and I've seen from the participation that all of you are teachers, but all of us have been students. We all realize how important it is at some point to act, but then take a step back and think, okay, what am I doing? Am I effective in what I'm doing? What do I need to change? And this is an integral part of how we learn. So that's the role of Selfie here. It's something that you integrate in your school. It's not something you do only once. The expectation is you do it at the beginning, you see where you stand, and then you implement a plan, you design, you implement the plan, and then you go again with Selfie and see how you have progressed and where you are in a later stage. So that's the first thing. Selfie is not about scores, it's about progress. Second thing, I wanted to mention at the beginning, but now I think now it's a good time, that Selfie involves the whole school community in the process. And this means that it involves school leaders, it involves teachers, it involves in-company trainers for work-based learning, and it involves students. And what we want with Selfie is to show that the point is not just to get their opinions, but the point is to involve them also in designing the digital strategy of the school and implementing it. And this involvement is important not only because the different user groups have an expertise around digital technologies, but because if you want to integrate change and innovation in your practice, you need the members to embrace it. You need to develop some sense of ownership. And they're not going to do it if this is imposed by one person. Plus, if you think like school leaders, I don't know how many of you are school leaders, but the weight on your shoulders is huge. It's not a one man or one woman show. You need the support of the whole school community, and that Selfie can help you to do this. And then I want to go to the role of the students. And I think the fact that Selfie integrates the voice of the students is something which makes it unique. You will not easily find it in other tools. And I want to say here that students have an expertise on digital technologies, which we would like to harness. Of course, the suggestions and the role of students is not something that you can take it as such and put it in the classroom, but it is a way of connecting everybody with what is happening out there. And I want to mention like an example, because as I said, I mean, schools are very different everywhere. We had an example of a school in Ireland where during the school closures, they had a group of students to support other students and teachers in using Microsoft Teams, in using WebEx, in using PowerPoint, because the students took some training and then they developed material and they were there as a help desk for their fellow students and teachers. And if you are like responsible for a school with low resources or an isolated place, this might be a good idea, like bringing your students on board. And also in developing this sense of ownership, I mean, students can help. They have a role and they have an expertise, as I said before. So, and this is something, and I think you will see this more when Alessandro will be presenting, to say that, I mean, it's interesting to take Selfie once and see where you stand, but it's more interesting to integrate Selfie in the practice of a school or a training center. And plan also the digital strategy, implement it and monitor it. And in order to do that, you need to create the appropriate structures and procedures. You need to have time for this self-reflections to think how you're going to involve the school community, when, who is going to initiate this process. You need to create the space, digital or physical, for the school community to meet and work on this. You need to allocate resources, and this might mean that you don't bring more money to do this, but you reshuffle the cards. But definitely you need to put some people in place to initiate and support this self-reflection process, and even interpreting the results of Selfie. It's not something that will happen automatically. Somebody needs to sit down, see what the report says, discuss and identify the priorities, devise an action plan, monitor the plan, implement it. So it's a lot of work. And in order to do that, apart from using a model of distributed leadership, a good idea is develop new collaborations. And these might involve other schools which have similar objectives. This might also involve collaboration with research centers, with universities, and with VET. You have the privilege of working closely with the industry. And this can be a very good support in the development and the integration of digital technologies. And that's why in my last slide, I hope I did not take very much time, just to update you on a couple of latest developments. The questions you will find in Selfie, we have validated them, and then they are to make sure that they are appropriate for what they measure, and to make sure that our users understand what we are trying to communicate. So there's a relevant publication on this. I mentioned earlier that we have new questions for the blended learning. There is work done on addressing the setting of work-based learning, and there have been some pilots going on which Alessandro will be speaking about, and our panelists, and the new module will be launched in October. The report of the schools was available through the Selfie website, but now it's available in PDF. And I was supposed to say this at the end, but Alessandro will say it now, and then we can repeat it at the end. In October 2021, we will have the Selfie forum. We'll update you about this. We'll have a newsletter if you're interested in signing in. So we will be happy to see you there as well. So this is for you to keep in touch. Even if you want to search us on Google, you can put Selfie, but make sure that you put EU as well. Otherwise, you will have information of photographs, which is interesting but not relevant in this case. So thank you very much. I hope this was useful, and I'm passing the floor back to Valentina. Yes.
Okay, thank you very much, Nicoleta. Sorry for the limited time. I know you wanted to say more and more. Unfortunately, we have time constraints. Let's move on with Alessandra Borpito from the European Training Foundation. If you want to take the floor now, the floor is yours, Alessandra.
Thank you, Valentina. Thank you, Nicoletta, for introducing first of all the event, and then the Selfie. I hope I managed to share my screen properly.
Yes, we can see it.
Okay, that's great. So now that Nicoletta well presented the concept behind about school as a learning organization, about the importance of self-reflections processes. What I'm going to do today is to talk about quickly a pilot that we have done of a new component that's of Selfie that is particularly relevant for vocational education and training. It is a module that is focusing also on work-based learning practices and to what extent the digital technologies are used. My name is Alessandro Borpito. I work at the ETF. I'm currently in Turin in my office. This is something that, in spite of we are in a red zone with limitation, I came to my office for today's event. We work in 29 countries as ETF. We are partners of Skillman, and all the countries with colors in this map are partner countries. And of course, there is Turkey, there is Georgia, and there is Montenegro, which are also the country involved in the panelist of today. So let's say very quickly, Selfie, I already shared in the chat the link because it's already live, it's there. It has been launched in October 2018. Is in more than 30 languages. So a lot of countries are using it. It's an international community that is using. And in Selfie, you have 8 areas. As Nicoletta was mentioning, this Selfie is based on a conceptual framework that has a strong scientific basis. And so we have all these areas. We have a set of questions for leadership, for the infrastructure, etc. So you have here, I'm not going to read the slide. And then what we have done together with in partnership with the Jersey was to develop an important component for that. It's the work-based learning component. And in this case, now, Nicoletta was already mentioning, okay, when you run Selfie in your school, it means that headmaster, teachers, and students are involved. With the Selfie work-based learning, we have also the companies on board, in particular the company trainers. And this is very, very important for effective learning also in the workplace, when it's taking place in the companies. And it's very important for two reasons. Of course, because now we have to see how to properly integrate technologies in work-based learning. This is something that we have to consider. And firstly, because it's a way to have a stronger relation between the companies providing work-based learning and the school environment. And so how we can make use of technologies to connect better the different learning environments, to make a meaningful and interconnected experience. So this is what is new with the Selfie work-based learning, okay? We bring in companies in Selfie. Now, to make an example, a very concrete example, as I was mentioning, there are 8 areas. And now, you see, these are the set of questions to reflect collectively on leadership. And there are questions, there are in the second column, you see the item that you want to understand, and then you see the formulation of the questions based on your role. And as you see now, we have, for example, on leadership, there is no student involvement, but there are school leaders and teachers in all topics, while for in-company trainers only on 2. The green background, it means that it's an optional question, while blue is mandatory question. But it's very important to see the different perspective also on this. So now, when you want to, assuming that you are now going to register your school in Selfie, you need a Selfie school coordinator. Often is the ICT coordinator or the CPD coordinator. In the different education system in our partner countries, there are different models and different profiles. But someone has to be in charge to run the process that is based on 4 main steps. And Lika and the other colleagues could already refer to this, but basically there are 4 main steps. The first one is about running the questionnaire. And so there is a moment, first of all, I would say, the Selfie school coordinator has to configure this in the dashboard of Selfie, your schools. You have to select which question you want. You might add some additional question. I will explain afterward. And then the system at the end is automatically generating a report comparing the different, offering different views. Then afterward, it's very important to have a reflection. You may focus on the weakest point. You may focus where there is a very different perceptions. Student might say nothing is not working, while the headmaster might say, yeah, that is quite well working. There is a scale from 1 to 5 for each question. So it's very important to focus on the differences and so on. And then, of course, it's very important. What do we do with these outcomes? It's very important to connect as a learning organization, as Nicoletta was highlighting, to plan, be realistic, be pragmatic. But the school need nowadays a digital strategy and an action plan. Now, let's move forward. When we talk about Selfie work-based learning, for example, this is a new development, but it took a lot of time, believe me. And we started, actually the JRC started with a feasibility study to extend how we can extend Selfie to work-based learning and engage companies. And so we made it, it's feasible. We understood that this is meaningful and we can make it. Then we had a pool of experts from partner countries and as well from EU member states, setting the questions for in-company trainers. And then we made a pilot that has been run last year during the COVID time. It was very challenging. And the people in the panel list were really heroes to me, I have to say, that they managed, in spite of the difficulties they had, to bring in their school in the piloting of Selfie, engaging with companies. And we expect, as Nicoletta was already mentioned, we wanted to disclose this at the end, but it's already clear that it's you know already, and we want to launch by the end of 2021 for all. So when you click and register, you will have also the option to activate the work-based learning component. I don't go now in this slide. It's just for information that it was a big pilot involving really 9 countries and including our guest, a special guest of today from Georgia, Montenegro, and Turkey. And you can see that we had finally a big grand total of schools sponsors. And I mean, it was really an interesting experience, I have to say. Now, I want to really guide you a bit in setting up. Okay, if you want to set up in your school, you can already register, and this is easy. You can check whether your language is already there, of course. And then it's important to have a school coordinator. It's very important that you look to the questionnaire, who you want to involve. You might involve all the teachers and students. You might want to, for self-work-based learning, I mean, for example, in Turkey, we looked to the ICT sectors, so school providing the ICT sector, for example. In Montenegro, we look. I mean, this is it's very important. So to look to the questionnaire, defining the timing and how many teachers in which classes you want to involve. And then you run, you share the link to the questionnaire. The questionnaire is filled in. From the dashboard for your school, you can, as a Selfie school coordinator, you can monitor in the progress. You might need to send some reminder, of course, as usual, but you have control from your dashboard. And then it's very important to look at the report that is automatically produced. And the last 2 points are in bold because it's very important to discuss the outcomes. What do we do with these outcomes? And we should have a consensus building, let's say, approach defining, because if you want to make changes, you have to have all your school on board. And that would be very important to do this through a consensus. Concerning the questions, I want to highlight one aspect. There are a set of common questions, so they are mandatory. Then there are a set of optional questions. You might, the green background, you remember the example from the leadership. And then you can create your own questions. Each school is different. It's definitely true. And there is no one-size-fits-all solution. So you might want to really add a question that it's really important for your economic sector, for your programs that you want to really explore. And then just to mention that you have, this is a picture that is saying that you have chart, you can compare, but you can add what it's important to keep in mind to take away is that you can add up to 10 customized questions, okay? Another important aspect, it's about the privacy, it's about the data. If you want a genuine self-reflection process, you have to consider that basically this is a completely anonymized process. So what you are writing, it has to be genuine, and you can be sure even the result of the school are for the school. Nobody else can get access to this report unless you give your credential to the ministry or to other national stakeholder because you wish so. But it's very important to ensure anonymity. This is very important because the self-assessment, the self-reflection works when you are confident that the process is you can say what you really think, and we have to aim to collect what the people is thinking about. So I will stop now here because I don't want to take too much time and stop sharing my screen. So, and I think it's a really excellent if we go and we touch the ground. So we have Now, with Nicoletta, we are going to really moderate the panelist. So, Valentina, if you don't mind, I would switch immediately to the panelist, to the testimonial. Is it in line with the agenda?
That's completely fine. Let's introduce them and see who they are.
Okay. Are you going to do this or should I?
Go for it.
Okay. So we wanted to really, so all the testimonials, the panelist member of today are, let's say, with different role and responsibility involved in the Selfie work-based learning pilot. And so it's, I mean, let's introduce first of all the member. So I would start from Mr. Talha Bektash. I hope my pronunciation is good enough. And
it's really correct. Thank you. And hello to everybody.
Soner was giving me some hints about the pronunciation. So, and with Nicoletta, we were looking on the internet. It's incredible just to be sure, but great really that you are here. And so Talha is a headmaster. So it's from a vet school in Istanbul. I went through the website. It's providing, if I remember correct, it includes 7 departments, but you may describe better than me for sure. Your great school is in Istanbul. So it's very important to hear the headmaster, how about the running of the pilot. Then the second guest that we have is Miss Elena Golubovich. I hope my pronunciation is correct.
Yes, it is.
Oh, welcome and thank you for being with us.
Thank you.
And Elena has been, let's say, the Selfie school coordinator, the ICT coordinator in one of the biggest schools in Podgorica in Montenegro. So is one it's about services and hospitality, which is a very important sector for the economy in the country. So she's bringing, Elena is bringing the Selfie school coordinator perspective. So was let's say registering the school, she was preparing the questionnaire, she was sending the links, following. So I mean, she made an incredible work also to make it running in Montenegro. And then we have with us also Lika Zalishvili. Hello, Lika.
Everyone. Very nice to meet this meeting. Hello.
Lika is bringing another perspective. It's the system perspective on the one hand, because another good question that with Nicoletta and the JRC we are talking about, yeah, but if we have in one country a consistent consider a big number of schools, how these outcomes could inform policymaker and national stakeholder. And with Lika, we will focus a bit specifically on the quality. For many years, digital education has been a second plan. It was for emergency. It was just because I can't do face-to-face, let's go. The COVID, it's terrible, but it's bringing some smashing our face and say, wake up, you can make it, use and blend. But the quality is an issue, definitely. And Lika could help us to reflect on this. So just a final word. So in this panel, we focus on that. I think this is well addressing the audience of this meeting. And keeping in mind what the TPAC framework says. I don't know if you are aware of it, but really, we have to be honest and say, by saying integrating digital technologies in teaching and learning for better pedagogy, for better stronger motivation and better learning outcomes is challenging. And it requires significant education innovation And it called for a process of planning for pedagogical, technological, and organizational change. So it's complex. Sometimes we see that the ICT is easily adopted in other sectors and not less in education. But this is, let me say, there is a rationale behind, and there is a logic because it's complex. When we talk about pedagogy, we are talking of something that already the ancient Greece were discussing. When we talk about ICT in teaching and learning, it's something that started more or less 30 years ago. So we have still a lot to learn. But I would pass now, Talha, I would start from you and addressing a couple of questions. We do have indicatively 10 minutes for each question, for each intervention. So 5 minutes for each answer, but I mean, we would like to keep it, if you agree, in a very conversational style, easy. We want really to learn from you, from your experience. And because you are a headmaster of your school, my question is basically, how can Selfie work-based learning outcomes, the result, could support the development of a digital strategy for your school? And whether how you might connect the outcomes to the development plan of the school.
Okay, thank you again. I'm going to start with the report part. Here, all PDF report is very useful, let me say first, and we can see all the results at a glance in a skewed way. So for me as a headmaster, I found some mistakes that we did last year. For example, in the presentation, Nicoletta, I think, said, instead of distributed leadership, we need some new collaborations. I think so. This is the correct one. So what we were trying to doing last year, until Selfie, just a distributed leadership. We have deputy heads and we have head of departments. So we had distributed leadership and they all do their own businesses, jobs, or whatever. So after we saw the items in the questionnaire of the Selfie, we saw that we have to think about new collaborations. I mean, we have to come together on the table. We have to think as a one mind. It's as an inclusion. So this is I think for me the most important aspect of implementing Selfie work-based learning in my school. This is what I saw.
Maybe if I can jump in here, because I mean, someone would think like that we have discussed this before, but Talha, this is really amazing that you bring this on the table. And I think like thinking about your collaborations along with the distributed leadership, because you need that as well. One of the things that we learned very well during this period with the challenges in education is that the collaboration aspect is so important, and the networking, because we realize that we cannot do things alone, right? So it's really amazing that that's the first thing you put on the table, and the importance of the Selfie report. And I wanted to point out here, sorry for taking the time, that the Selfie report is one of the things that make Selfie more than a questionnaire. It's a tool, it's something that you can use to think about. So sorry about the intervention here.
It's a really good point. So for me, the very important point is the new collaborations. And another thing for me as a school headmaster, we already had some connections with the companies that we sent our students for internship. But until last year, we just listened them to correct in the curriculum, not other aspects. But when we saw the items, I think there's an item in the leadership that you already saw, Alessandro, on your presentation. There's an item that asking including digital strategy of school including companies to this strategy. Until we saw this question, we didn't realize that it's really important to integrate companies to our digital strategy. And now we realize that, okay, we have to ask them their expectations, their interventions, or their possible sharings or etc. So it's really important for me to share these two tools for leadership part.
Talha, may I ask you which department you decided to involve in the pilot of self-aware-based learning?
Okay, we have 4 companies included in the self-aware-based learning. One is an more or less electronics department, and computer information technology. Sorry, if this is the correct name. Information technology department, and also office management department. So these are 3 departments that our company is related with.
Okay, and during the pilot, was a time where the school was locked down, or was actually open or blended learning was provided? How do you manage to bring in teachers and students and in company trainers?
Okay, we were in a blended teaching period. I mean, some of students are coming to school for 1 or 2 days, and the rest is at home. And also the internship was also going through. And my last year students are also attending companies for their internship. We have good connection over internet. We have in this school we are using Google G Suite for Education platform. So we have very good connection with teachers and students and companies, etc. So everything was online. We didn't meet face to face with any company, any teacher, any student, etc.
A last question, if I may. If we have the Jersey with us, they are developing and maintaining, so we have the opportunity to ask them for some improvement in Selfie. Which one for you might be necessary or could help you in your work and as a headmaster to implement? How could Selfie be improved, let's say, from your view?
Okay, according to my point of view, the questions, the forms of questions, or the understandings of questions for students are a bit academic. It's like a graduate thesis type of questions. So we are working with high school students. It's their age is 15, 14 sometimes, or 18, 17. So the language is a bit hard for them. Maybe in Turkish translation, I don't know, but I also checked the English version as well. So maybe it will be the good idea to simplify the language of the questions, at least for students.
I think that's such a good point. I mean, it's true, because probably I see Helena also.
You have to take note.
Yes, I think it's really important. It's not easy, but especially because students is like our biggest user group. We think it's important to include them. We will definitely take this on board and try and find ways of making the questions relevant to the students and understand what we're talking about, instead of so yeah, thank you very much. And maybe if I try and wrap up in the takeaway lessons, if Talha has finished. Talha, unless you have other comments.
No, everything's fine, thank you.
So very quickly, I keep like the concept of collaborations. I keep that Selfie at the same time offers an opportunity to structure how to think about creating a digital strategy. For example, if I was at school and somebody was telling me you need to develop a digital strategy, I would say, fine, that sounds good, but where do I start? So I think the point that Talha made, like it gives us some ideas on what to look for, on how to think about the digital strategy. I think it's really important and very useful. Thank you so much. And then I will pass the floor back to Alessandro.
Talha, thank you very much. We had really a very good relation during the pilot, also with the Ministry of National Education. Lida Kita, I don't know if he's connected, is my colleague, liaison officer with Turkey. And so it was really a very good experience. And I hope very much that we will have opportunity to meet somewhere in a future, also in person, of course. So now I would pass the floor to Yelena. Yelena, thank you for being with us. Now for me, it's very important, really, with you to focus. You managed to coordinate. You coordinated basically a process in your school. I was mentioning to the process. So what was really challenging for you this time to bring the run of selfie until the end of the process?
So we have using Selfie for a few years now, since the start of the project. And I think the biggest mistake that we made at the beginning was giving a questionnaire to students without explaining to them what it was and what are the benefits. And since we are in high school with teenagers, I think that engaging students was the main issue. So to explain to them what Selfie is and what the benefits are. And to make it more understandable for them, we basically told them we need to know what you need so that we can give it to you. And that is the thing that they responded to. Our school has around 1,200 students, and around 10% of students engaged in the questionnaire.
Okay.
We've put students that are engaged in dual learning. So we really wanted to have results that are genuine. And the response of our students was that for them, the questionnaire isn't interactive as they would like it to be. What Talha said, the language in it wasn't so easy to understand for them. So this year, we made selfie sessions with them. During the lessons, a teacher would explain to them each question and then encourage them to give the answer, the answer they believe is true. Mm-hmm. So I think that students was one of the main issues. Also, in-company instructors, the results show that, well, in-company instructors are not only instructors, they're also employees in those companies. So lack of time is one of the biggest issues with them. They find it hard to find the time to do the questionnaire, and our vocational education coordinator on the school level had really hard time engaging them. So actually, we had only one trainer responded to the questionnaire. We hope that next year we'll have a better result because we decided to put a digital strategy into our action plan. And that action plan will focus on company trainers. We plan to organize a set of meetings with them to see how we can help them to be more engaged in the process, and also to see what are the setbacks for online learning, because most of the instructors, they tell us they don't have time for developing materials as well as being involved in this kind of processes. I think that Selfie helped us a lot during the past year when the pandemic started, where we could detect what problems we had relating to infrastructure, IT infrastructure in school. And I'm really happy that this year we have much better results regarding that issue, because we invested into IT infrastructure, and we also implemented a rent-a-tablet policy in our school for students that don't have computers at home, so they can come to school at a tablet so they can use it for online learning. So regarding infrastructure, our results are much better, but still the process of Selfie is a bit challenging when it comes to students and their engagement.
So this is a very important lesson and about the students that,
Yes.
and I have to say that this is something that this new generation, they have probably less time or will to focus on stuff. They are really using a lot of instant messaging, a lot of very fast multitasking. This is a trend even in so it's very important that on the one hand, yes, we might prepare a bit the students, but explaining the exercise. Some of them might find
Yes.
a bit of repetition, the school, some of the questions and so on. So maybe, or also simplification. But this is what I also learned from you, Elena, is the fact that is not the first year for your school on the use of Selfie. And I would ask you, so perhaps did you compare the outcomes from one year to the other? There was also comparative analysis about the progress or what has been changed from one year to the other.
Yes, every time we finish a session, we compare the results with the previous one. And in this way, we know what we did better and on what issues we should focus to. Right now, as I said, we're working on a strategy that will be part of our action plan for the next year. And I believe that a yearly analysis is the best one because we know that we can do 3 Selfie sessions during a school year, but the time frame between them is really short and you can't see implementation of the results for such a short time. So our experience showed us that doing a session at the end of each year is probably the best one because we know what we have done regarding the action plan, what steps we took, maybe what goals we didn't make and make to happen. So this year's, the last one session that we did a few weeks ago, is the basis for the next year, what we should do better and on what to focus. For example, last year showed us that the infrastructure and the teachers' professional development were the main issues. So we focused on that. This year, we're focusing on in-company instructors.
And you mentioned that this was not your first run. And this is indeed, I have to say that Montenegro is already using quite, in a very big number of schools, Selfie. And indeed, this happened in Turkey. What we have done in Montenegro is to have the pilot of Selfie word-based learning in with, let's say, the involvement of the Ministry of Education. And the Ministry of Education is also having CPD section for schools managers and the teachers. So this is clearly a system already wide approach in the country about the use. Okay, Elena, thank you very much for this. I wanted to ask you, when you were running the pilot, the last question, well, it was during a lockdown of the school or the school was open? And
it was
how
during
did
the lockdown.
It was during the lockdown. And how did you manage to communicate with the students involved, for example?
We use Microsoft Teams platform for our lessons. So that was each head teacher found the time with their class to schedule a lesson that is only for Selfie, and they would guide them through the process using Microsoft Teams. Okay. And they also shared screen so that they can read the questions at the same time, and students were doing the questionnaire on their phones.
Okay, thank you very much. It's a very concrete example. So Office 365 is in Montenegro indeed the, let's say, the virtual classroom system that has been is in use. So that was great to connect with existing tools and to make use of it. I don't know, Nicoletta, if you want to add something, otherwise.
Yes, very quickly. And I think in a way we're also, we have a couple of questions which we can address, but I think we have some more time to discuss the experiences of, and the experience from the actual action. I think both points Elena made on student, which goes well with what Talha mentioned about the student engagement. It's something important, and it's also at the center of our attention. One approach that you proposed, like the teacher discussing with the students, explaining and giving them the time to think what this means and then respond. It's something that it has been followed also in Portugal and might be an answer for how to use this. But again, we will work on the phrasing of these questions. I think it's important. Another thing is, I was wondering, and maybe there's not an easy answer there, if you have consider to connect student engagement with the process of planning, with the process of implementation, because sometimes, you know, students think, okay, you ask me about something, I say my opinion, and then I forget about this. But if they feel that there is a follow-up, if they feel they have a say, if they feel they have a role, then this might have a different you know, a different angle into their engagement. However, sometimes these things are easier said than done, and I have no proposal at this point to say how to do it, but I would like to put this on the table because I think, especially with students which are teenagers, they have ideas, and that might be something interesting. And I think the other challenging issue, and I liked quite the approach, is the one of engaging in company trainers, because it's a different world, it's a different mindset. The issue of time is with the schools, it's with the companies, and there we definitely need a strategy. And as I was trying to point out, it's like we need to make time, space for these people, allocate resources and allocate roles. Probably we need to think what kind of structure we want in the company in order to make this alignment and connection with them. Because if you try to impose new things on an already full schedule, it might work for one time, second, but then it's not going to follow up. So we need to think how we can reshuffle the cards again and see what we can use and how we can think the way of connecting the company with the schools and where they can meet, because again, we need to think about what is the point. So I will stop here, pass the floor back to you, Alessandro. Thank you for
Thank you, Nicoletta, for this further reflection. And this is making me reminding that it's very important. I know, Nicoletta, you have something in mind about having a community of schools, and because these are very similar challenges for all schools. And I have a question for Elena and Tala, but now I would move perhaps if we have time, because I'm really curious to see how, in practical terms, things have moved forward. But now I would pass the floor to Lika. And passing to Lika, again, okay, we are moving into Georgia now. So we've started from Turkey, we went into Montenegro, and now we go in Eastern Europe in Georgia. And actually, we make another step here, because here, Lika, perhaps you can introduce yourself, but basically you work on the quality of education. And so I prepared a question for you that I want to address about the quality. So I'm saying that we are stepping into the system perspective because now it's clearly, okay, Georgia has been piloting before Selfie in general education. More recently, with Selfie work-based learning has been piloted in that, in all school implementing a dual program. So It has been practically a very interesting exercise involving different sectors, with school providing different programs. And my question is, how can a regular self-assessment process at school level improve the quality of digital education at system level?
Okay, thank you so much again. It's a great honor to me to be here today. So first of all, I want to mention that I also was coordinator of Selfie pilot project, because during last year I'm working at a wet college, so I have an opportunity to be coordinator too, so I can share my experience of both sides. So what about your questions, and what about the quality of digital education, especially in Georgia? First of all, I want to mention that we had a really small experience in digital education, especially in wet system, and especially in work-based learning, because this is more practical learning and teaching process. So the digital education experiences was really really small in this area. So because of pandemic period, we had to change our ways of teaching and learning, and we began a distant learning process. So when we are talking about quality in Georgia, this is regulated on national level, and all vocational education institutions need to make some surveys in order to create some new steps, or plan some other activities, other steps. They make some surveys, but all the surveys always oriented on traditional types of teaching and learning, not IT infrastructure, not digital education, and so on. And Selfie was a really important tool for the institutions to assess, to evaluate their real environment, who they are, and what was their weaknesses and the strengths. Because when we are talking to other institutions and other colleges, they always said that we knew, we have some opinions, we have some thoughts, what is our weaknesses, what is our strengths, but they did not have opportunity to say something and to talk about this based on real evidence. So Selfie was a really good tool to help them describe the situation, what was happening in real. So this was very important when we in Georgia we discussed the results in a public meeting, and it found out that IT infrastructure, internet connection, or some software is really good in colleges, in institutions, but teachers and students' digital skills are not high, so they cannot use this technology in a good way to improve quality of digital education. So I think Selfie pilot project for Georgia was really necessary, and it was the best time maybe to begin this project. Because of pandemic period, we still have some courses in distance learning process. So I think we all saw how good tool is Selfie in order to improve quality in your institutions.
Oh, thank you, Lika, and thank you for recalling that you were directly involved in one school. And that's it's important. So you were really also directly involved. And I was wondering, do you think that Selfie could become a tool for the development, for ensuring quality in digital education in Georgia?
I think yes. I think that this is not only my opinion. We're talking about this. We were talking about this for other college, for other VET institutions, and they also said that this is really a good tool, a really good opportunity to assess your institutions and plan what is your next steps, because some colleges already begun this process. They made some meetings to all stakeholders, and they began to create and to make their digital strategy, because it's a really important document in this period especially, and they began to work on this document, and some people from system level also involved in this process, because we are trying to help them in this process to share experiences from one institutions to another.
Thank you for this. Indeed, even in Georgia, we were working with the Ministry of Education and different departments during the pilot of selfie work-based learning. We had a focus group where we were reading about discussing of possible next step. And indeed, there is clearly a connection in my understanding about the philosophy behind the selfie and quality in digital education. I mean, more and more, we know that quality is a priority for all the countries that are here together to discuss about selfie. But you might have external assessor evaluations of schools. This is one way. But more and more, it's clearly important that the self-assessment is a very powerful tool to improve the quality of education. So there is self is all about self-reflection, and therefore, I mean, assuming that the country Georgia decide to step into selfie, I mean, it's clearly important to consider to have to use aggregate data to look at the overall digital education dimension in the country and see the quality using the same parameters that are used for traditional teaching and learning. And we don't have to reinvent the wheel at all. That's clear. But we need evidence, information. It's clearly, as a self-reflection process, is very subjective. We have to be careful in using this information, but we know that the self-assessment is in many countries mandatory, and therefore, I mean, the digital dimension in teaching and learning is clearly now will be, whether we like it or not, in our future, not anymore only as distance education, but will be with us. It's evident. So it's very important to have a quality standard. It's very important, therefore, with you, Lika, that we manage to connect the quality assurance at system level, at school level, but at system level with the selfie. I think now, I don't know if we have questions. Otherwise, I would have another question for the three panelists.
Alessandro, there are two questions, I think. The rest have been, and there is one more. And I will start with the two we had first, and they come from Muraj Makaria, I think, if I'm saying the name right. And one question is like, how do I get my polytechnic in Kenya the potential to use selfie, and how do we package it? And the question is also if we can, what we can do to support institutions with no background information on the use of selfie, and how this can be presented in their director. And I think the second question has been answered, like you can contact the Skillman Secretariat, and if you go to the selfie website, you can find in the resources videos with testimonials. You can find a very quick guide on how to use selfie. We have an infographic with the benefits. So yeah, and there's another question: what is selfie for one to conceptualize easily? I would say, like, and please feel free to join in responding to this question, like how you can conceptualize selfie easily. I would say that selfie is an instrument that can support schools to develop their thinking, their understanding about how to integrate digital technologies in their practice. It's not just it's not just answering some questions, but creating a new practice on how schools can develop. And I link this to what Lika was saying about the quality assurance and Alessandro, because I think it's one way to boost development is to evaluate somebody and say, okay, this is what you have done, this is your score. But what is most important, I think we can think very in a more like sustainable and long-term way, is that selfie can support schools to learn how to learn and develop. So I don't know if somebody else wants to comment on this and what else we can do for sort of supporting somebody who is new to use selfie. As I said, I think it's quite straightforward. You can use our resources page, you can use our email. But Alessandro?
Lot of resources available. We already shared in the chat the link to the Selfie web pages where you can find. And to me, there is also Mari asking, hello, thank you for this opportunity. Kindly elaborate on what a selfie is. Selfie is, let's say, a tool for schools to integrate digital technologies in teaching, learning, and assessment practices. Okay, so it's driven by pedagogy and aims to integrate the use of technology in a meaningful way, which means that you do this to improve the learning outcomes. It means that you want to improve the motivation of students. You want to improve the accessibility. One topic that we didn't really touch a lot, but it's quite clear that the digital divide has been a big issue during the COVID-19. So it's very important that the use of technology is not exacerbating this aspect and this aspect of social inclusion, and that especially for that are very important. But we understand how to ensure equity, how to ensure a use of a digital technology that improve and empower, because many of Elena, also, and Talha was referring, we need to involve, we need to work together, and that it's absolutely something to keep in mind, more participatory approaches, because this is the complexity that we have to deal with. But teachers are overloaded, and so we have to be aware that we have to find the right way to make it. And one point is about the motivation to join this exercise. Now, I don't know if I can address the question, Nicoletta, or we have other questions from otherwise, I have a question, but I would go afterwards.
There are some more questions, like how effective selfie can be in the developing countries with low infrastructure for digitalization programs, and I think that's a very good question. I don't know, Alessandro or the colleagues here.
I wanted to see if from the panelist who wants to answer. Talha, please, the floor is yours.
Yes, maybe I can answer, because Turkey is also another developing country, and we have very limited resources for infrastructures as well. So Selfie helps us to understand which part of infrastructure is prioritized and which should be first. And because if you are very limited resources, you have to choose the really correct part of infrastructures to invest on. I mean, so you can do it right. So Selfie is a really good tool to make to understand which part of the infrastructure is really should be first part and next part. I mean, you can make a linear development with Selfie tool. That's my answer, I think.
Thank you, Talha.
I think, yeah, Alessandro, go.
No, I was inviting Elsa, Lika, or Elena
Yes.
if they want to top up, or otherwise, Elsa, I thank you, Talha.
I would
yeah,
like
please.
to add. Okay, so I would like to add that what Talha said, when you know what your priorities are, then it's easier to go and find donors for the equipment, for the infrastructure, because usually when you ask for a donation from companies, because we are at schools, we work with a lot of companies. Then with Selfie, we can show them why we really need that. And they're more open to donating IT equipment to schools. So that can show them why that is good for the school and for the students that they are training.
I think that's very practical and very useful as well. And again, I mean, Selfie is a tool which looks at the different characteristics of the schools. Low infrastructure, I think, is one of the interesting things. And I think this is something where Selfie can play a good role, because it speaks to schools which have don't have they are not developed already. So looking for donors, looking for collaborations, prioritizing, thinking, okay, one step at a time. Nobody has to do everything and address all challenges. So yeah.
Okay, and what I wanted to add to this, that Selfie is not just for good schools.
Yes.
This is the first point to keep in mind. When we talk about innovation, actually, developing and transition countries are more creative than many of developed countries, I have to say. I discovered that you have to find a solution, and whatever you have, you try to make it happen. So don't think about Selfie for a very good schools. We were very lucky in the pilot. We had we had very good school, clearly, but also in schools that were committed to do this. So even if you were whatever school, I don't remember now the name of who was addressing this question, but whatever school you are, it's time to start, and you can think about, you have an infrastructure problem. You might realize that bring your own devices could be a solution, maybe just for some subject and not for all. You want to make a group working together, you might allow them to use the smartphone in the classroom for their work, for their research. This is the way they are going to work in the real world. So, I mean, any school can use a Selfie. What is important, it's about the process, to explain it, I think, but also to make it, to go from A to Z. There was you may remember the slide with the 4 main steps. After the report is generated, if you bring in the companies, as Tala was mentioning, it's very important to engage them. Okay, you bring out the outcomes. You highlight the main elements that were not, there was discrepancies between the different users. Then you might then say, okay, this is an issue, how we can solve it, what we can try. So the engagement from the beginning to the end. I don't know, what I'm going to share in the chat is a report that is actually an ETF report. Okay, I share, apologize if I'm not writing perfectly because I'm speaking, but this is a report that is showing how this is a mapping about the response in developing and transition country to the COVID-19 crisis, about the provision of distance digital learning solution during the lockdown. So you can see that all countries, even in Palestine, to make an example, where they had a really difficult condition, I found amazing example of using of technology, because the teachers were really committed, and they wanted really to go beyond their comfortable zone and make it happen, to help their pupils. So motivation is clearly very important to make the things happening. And the selfie is just engaging and making smart questions. And so you can really mobilize all your intelligence in your school. So this is a, can I ask my question, or there are other questions?
No,
if there are other
Alessandro,
questions,
yes, but just very quickly, there's a question like if people can test selfie, the answer is yes. You can go and you create an account to see what the questions are and how the thing works. Please make sure that you use the term test or demo in the name of the school so that we know. And we don't use it to calculate results. That's the only thing, and there is absolutely no charge at all for using selfie. I don't know if I'm missing something. There was a question if there is a minimum infrastructure required for a school to use selfie. I mean, selfie can be used in mobile phones. If this question has to do with the school taking the exercise, but just internet connection and nothing more. Yeah,
they are very basic, the ICT requirements, and I mean, it's made in a way that anyone from anywhere can use it, whether this is a tablet, a PC, or whatever. So I think it's free. It's free, and this is clearly also an added value. And I think if there are a policymaker connected to this event, it's very important to keep it on voluntary basis. It should be, let's say, something that a school decide to do in order to improve the digital capacity to deliver and to blend the digital learning and teaching and learning, and to ensure that there is an engagement of the school to improve this aspect. Now, there is another question.
No, yeah, I think Talha has raised his hand, no?
Yes. I think we are coming to an end, but before we come to an end, if you let me, I want to share something interesting finding. According to teachers, students are digitally not enough for doing something. According to students, teachers are not enough in digital aspects. I think we have to work on perception. I mean, this is what we decided after seeing the results of the selfie. So perception is really important thing, because both sides are thinking the other side is not enough for the digital literacy. So it was really interesting to me. So I wanted to share with the community.
I think that's very important, Talha, and I think it's also important why we need a discussion after we get the report. Yeah. But Alessandro, now we'll stop. You want to ask your questions, and I
we don't have time. I think, Valentina, we are running late, so
just a little bit. But it's too funny to watching you guys do.
Okay, good.
Yeah, well, it was I was reflecting about the motivation, and I wanted to ask you whether the students were looking for the certificate, because when you run a selfie, you can download a certificate that you have run it, and whether the school is issuing the badge that is possible to issue to say, I'm a school that is running selfie. Who wants to answer? Well, I would pass I would start from Lika and then Elena for Talha, if just to know, because we were talking, okay, we have to engage the students, it's difficult. we can try to sell ELSA, saying you have ELSA certificate. Did you do it? Did you use it? Were students aware about this?
Okay, I can answer these questions. It's really interesting that in social media I saw some student certificates. They published their certificate, self-certificate after they filled out the form, and I think this was a really good way to motivate students, because they were some proud of their job, and they published this certificate. So I think this is good way to improve, to encourage students to fill out the questionnaire.
Thank you, Lika. Yelena, very quickly, did you use this? Were students aware about this?
Yes, but our students actually saw it as I did the questionnaire proof. So they would screenshot the certificate and send to their teacher and see, you see, I did it. I didn't.
Okay, it's done.
So...
Okay. Talha.
So we used, like Yelena, the badges. Also, we encouraged our students to write this certificate on the CVs to apply for an internship. So they were really encouraging for the students. For the school badge, we also published our school badge in the social media, and I think it's really interesting and important that if a school wants to apply for a new Erasmus grant, in the background information, Selfie is a very useful tool for telling what the school is. I think I believe in so.
Thank you so much for your testimonials, for your experience, for the amazing work you have done, and during this difficult moment, you managed to find, you managed firstly to keep your school moving forward, to continue, and then you managed to also look to how to improve digital education through the piloting of self-aware-based learning. Now, Valentina, so we have some messages to share before closing in a couple of minutes, if possible. So, Nicoletta, what can we say? What next? That might be relevant.
Yes, only I will start with some facts again to remind to colleagues that we will be having the Selfie Forum in October 2021. You can you can subscribe to our newsletter to receive news about Selfie. We will send it like 3 times a year with updates and
the newsletter was the link to join the newsletter was in your presentation.
It's in my presentation,
okay.
And you can find the link also in the website as well. Feel free to contact us if you need any more information. The new work-based learning module will be launched again in October within the Selfie Forum, and it will be available in 32 languages as the rest of Selfie by then. And just to say, I wanted to stress in closing and thank all the panelists. I think that was a great learning opportunity for me, and thank you very much for all you have shared. Is to say, as Alessandro also said, that it's not easy what we're asked to do, and I think collaboration and networking and supporting each other around and thinking in relation to Selfie can help us in this process. So that's my message from my side. Like we're in this together. You're not supposed to do this alone.
So thank you. And from my side, just to tell you that okay, Selfie is under development at the Joint Research Center, and what we are doing in partnership with Jersey is this year is to make a national pilot in Ukraine and Azerbaijan. So what we are doing, this is our big pilot. Actually, is the Ministry of Education of these countries that are, let's say, organizing the pilot with a big sample of schools. So this is clearly is an international tool, and step by step we are really we have interest from Central Asia as well. So it's clearly a momentum. The post-pandemic will be more digital, and this is kind of it's becoming a bit, let me say, I hope I'm not exaggerating, this de facto standard selfie for the digital capacity of school in the world. So you might really take pay a visit to this too. And concerning the 3 countries participating today, we are publishing, this is in close collaboration with the Ministry of the 3 countries. We developed a report with a set of policy recommendations about the general adoption, and will be published by the end of 2021. So I think we can close at this stage, and
Yes.
I would pass the floor to Valentina.
All right, let me just wrap up for today's session. It was really interesting. I would like to give a huge thanks to you, Alessandro, and Nicoletta for facilitating. It was really interesting also to see you kind of overlapping one another. It was very interesting to hear the 3 experiences from Yelena, Talha, and Lika. Thank you very much for being here. I would just like to mention to all of you that all the materials of this session will be updated on the Skillman web page. I already sent the link in the chat box, but I'm going to send it again so that everybody is on the same page on this. So you will find all the materials over there. Again, thank you very much. Our next events, if you want to keep following us in our activities in the future, will be on April 19th and April 20th. 2 different webinars on creating effective innovation ecosystems and the Tibetan civic participation. Again, innovation is one of the main key points that we want to always to focus for our activities. If you want to register, Julia is sharing with you the link in the chat box. Having said that, again, thank you very much for attending. I'll see you next time and have a great, wonderful day. Bye-bye.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Bye.
Goodbye.
Thank you
Bye-bye.
so much. Goodbye.
Bye.
Thank you, everybody. Goodbye.